And I was going to show you a picture of Karl Johan at that time. You can see what Norway sort of looks like when Sylvie and Rika are running around, Christiania.
Okay, any questions?
Sonia.
Sonia, can you unmute yourself? Yeah, good.
Thank you. The first photo you had of the young women, they look like they're marching for the vote. And
they do look like that. That picture?
Yes.
They do look like that, but actually I don't think they are, because Norwegian women got the vote in a very unusual way. In fact, this happened in a couple of other European countries, but they did not have a very robust suffragette movement in Norway. They had some, but it was not that robust. But in 1913, what was going on is that the male workers were pushing hard for the vote, because before then only the bourgeois class, landed gentry, businessmen, people like that could vote. And the legislature decided that they were under all this pressure to give all men the vote, but they felt that if they gave women the vote at the same time, they sort of figured that laboring women were probably too busy to vote and maybe not well enough educated to do so, and that the women of the bourgeois class would vote the way their husbands told them to vote. And so by giving women the vote, it was a way of diluting the power of extending the franchise to all men. And so all of a sudden, women in Norway have the vote, but it's not really done for the women so much. And so, in fact, many women of Sylvie's mother's generation didn't really exercise their vote. It sort of takes Sylvie's generation to begin to do that. So this may be a Sudetenland march. I'm not sure quite what this is.
Well, I was thinking of the sashes and the white dresses, which were typical in the United States as well when the suffragettes were.
Yes, but also young women in that generation often wore white all summer. Like it wasn't just it was a summer dress in that sort of Edwardian period. So, but it could be they may be celebrating the vote. The thing is, I think this photograph is from later than when they got the vote.
Thanks.
Okay. Other questions?
Norway had the first woman leader fairly early within European countries.
Yeah, it is remarkable how fast Norway modernizes. And one of the arguments about that is that, well, all these people left for America, about a quarter of them returned, not right away. Sometimes their children returned to Norway, and some of them returned for good. About a quarter returned for good. Many of the ones that were over there came back to visit Norway, bringing money and a lot of new ideas. And so there is this argument that this influence from America modernized Norwegian society because it was a more egalitarian society in America. Back in Norway in the 1870s, someone of a lower class had to tip his hat to a higher class person on the street. And a lot of the people who immigrated to America talked about that as a serious reason for why they left Norway. They found that humiliating and a constant reminder that they were sort of nothing. And in America, you didn't have to do that. And so this kind of opening up of Norwegian society that comes from the backwash, really, of people returning to America, from America back to Norway with more modern ideas. This is partly why Asta Hansteen goes to America, is to understand better how the American suffragettes are doing the work that they're doing. And she becomes very enabled by them. I mean, she absorbs all their ideas and she goes to all kinds of meetings with them. She talks about how their writing is so much better than hers. Like they make excellent arguments, and and that's sort of interesting. So you can see how the movement between the two countries transforms both of them, I would argue. So.
It's also interesting that Norway in the 1920s was a relatively poor country by European standards.
Yeah, that's true.
And that was true until probably the 1960s, where before the oil, that this was, and how did the relative poverty affect the women's rights?
Well, I think, it meant that there was a very small class of highly educated women who would be pushing. I mean, I think, um, in some ways, maybe the ability to migrate to America may have siphoned off some of the more ambitious women of Nora's generation and the generation after that. Anybody who really wanted more opportunity than they could have in Norway probably tried to come to America somehow. And there was, once a lot of Norwegians got to America, there was a lot of course, what is now known as chain migration of family members sending a ticket for so-and-so's younger daughter who, can't get married, and let's bring her to America. Also, there were quite a few cases of young women who were got pregnant in Norway, who were unmarried, who came over and had their children in America, because women were a little, there weren't enough of them out on the prairie. And I actually talk about this in the book a little bit. And some people of Norwegian descent have come up to me and said, in my family's immigration story, my great grandfather married a woman who already had a child, and then they had like 5 more. And that was not uncommon. There's often an oldest child who was from some other father. But it wasn't really, if a young woman knew how to run a household and cook and sew and clean and seemed healthy, if she had a child, that was not really a big problem for many of the men who were already out on the prairie looking for healthy wives. So